When JK was studying radiation therapy, he never imagined he'd become a cancer patient himself. At 33, he was diagnosed with Burkitt's lymphoma, one of the most aggressive blood cancers, after a lump suddenly appeared on his neck that he eventually couldn't ignore. JK endured months of grueling chemo while being a father to two kids under 4, relying on the strength of his wife Pan and their support network to help hold it all together. JK has been in remission for the past year, and while he's back to feeling like himself, his recovery remains a daily process. An important part of his healing has been launching How Bloody Good, an ongoing campaign urging people to donate blood, which he calls the red liquid gold. Blood cancers are the second most prevalent form of cancer in Australia, and this Blood Cancer Awareness Month is the perfect time to talk about it. This is Jaraad, Kader.
Welcome to Young Blood, the volunteer video podcast dedicated to young men's mental health. I'm your host, Cal McPherson, and this is a platform for young men and their loved ones to share lived experience stories and show that no matter what you're going through, you're not alone. Suicide is the #1 killer of young people, and changing that starts with speaking up. So let's do it. This show touches on some tough topics that may provoke strong emotions. If you find anything in this chat distressing, please do whatever you need to do to look after yourself.
So JK, you were working in cancer therapy before you got diagnosed, is that right?
Yeah, so at the point in time when I got diagnosed, no, but my undergraduate was in medical radiation science. So high doses of radiation therapy to treat cancer patients, usually, tumor masses. However, there can be for a whole raft of different reasons as well. So that's what I studied at uni, came out, did my PDY or like internship essentially at RPA in Sydney, did a couple more years at Sydney, and then I made a switch, still staying within, I guess, the medical field, but going to medical devices. So more industry-based, industry is kind of what they call it. And I went from cancer into sort of minimally invasive cardiac technology, working for a company that produces and distributes and sells devices. So that's where I was at the point in time when I was diagnosed.
What was your perspective on cancer before you were diagnosed?
Yeah, I mean, I probably hadn't given it a whole lot of thought, but, working within cancer therapy and working in the medical space, I knew there's life outside of a diagnosis. So, I always think back to the times when I was working as a radiation therapist. One of the things that I loved, and I think the patients loved, is, a lot of people think that you go in for cancer therapy, they're getting their radiation therapy, and it's this really gloomy environment where in fact it was quite the opposite. I found it a really positive, just fantastic place to be. And there were great vibes. There was a lot of obviously challenges for people, and it was incredibly difficult for a lot of people. But, that sense of positivity transpired in that department. So, I was aware that people could go in and be a person that doesn't just have a cancer diagnosis. There's a whole other bunch of things that are about that person, and people come in and we get to talk about their life and their days and their grandkids and things that were not just their cancer, because, that was the bread and butter. We knew that, but then we knew that there was plenty of other stuff to talk about. So I had a perspective that there's life outside of cancer for an individual, and it can be positive. It doesn't have to be complete doom and gloom.
Take us through getting diagnosed initially.
Yeah, so that, in a lot of ways for me, that was probably one of the most challenging times. It all happened incredibly quickly. So I had a lump pop up on my neck. It grew over the space around 2 weeks. So the type of lymphoma I had, lymphoma being blood cancer, was called Burkitt's lymphoma. And it's absolutely the most aggressive type of blood cancer there is. So the speed in which the lump popped up was incredibly fast. So I noticed it, actually while I was at the gym. And then it just grew and grew and grew, and I kind of just ignored it. I thought it was a cyst. To eventually, it was kind of hard to ignore because it was protruding out, and people are like, what is that on your neck? And so then I get the testing started, And at that point in time, when you start the testing, that's when it becomes really front of mind, right? Because then you go do like MRIs and biopsies, and that's when you start to think the worst, or do become a lot more unsure. Prior to that, you could kind of just push it to the back of your mind and just assume, it was something else. So when you're going through the testing, you get referred on to another person. You've got to wait a certain amount of time before you get the test result. And that was really, really hard. Found that really, really hard. So then I got the diagnosis from my local GP. He said, after about 2 weeks of testing, so we're probably about close to a month after the lump popping up, he said, you've got lymphoma. I didn't even really know a whole lot about lymphoma at that point in time. But he goes, I'm going to refer you on to a hematologist. We don't know exactly what type of lymphoma it is. We got no idea about the treatment plan, no idea about the staging. So he said, here's your hematologist referral. They're going to contact you and you're probably going to get more tests. Okay, great. So then you go get more tests. And again, you start now to think, okay, I've got cancer. And that you don't really know much more about that. So then your head spirals a little bit more. So when you actually find out from the hematologist a bit of a treatment plan, that's when you can actually get game ready. And that's when I found that the switch flicked. And I went from the fear of the unknown to, okay, now I know at least what I've got. So now I can focus on getting over it.
Did that rock you when you found out that it was lymphoma? Like, were you waiting so long for those results? Were you expecting that it would be a cyst or just something else weird?
You kind of I found I had a bit of an inkling. It's, you just, for me, and I guess, I had that medical-ish background. In a lot of ways, I could sort of read between the lines a little bit more. I picked up on some of the words that one of the radiologists took when they took my core biopsy in terms of it not being bloody. And then I went and read clinical papers on core biopsies being not bloody, and that's more of an indicator that it's cancerous. So there was little things for me. So by the time I actually got the diagnosis, it was actually relief, to be totally honest. It was like, okay, I have a diagnosis. I know what it is. So now we can move on and deal with what I've got.
So you were doing Dr. Google Scholar.
A little bit of Dr. Google, which I know you're not meant to do, but yeah, I've gone and done it. The other thing was I was pretty fortunate, right? I had a friend of mine, his brother is a doctor. It actually turns out that he was an advanced trainee hematologist. And so I got to know him a whole lot better throughout my treatment because he was, one of the doctors that treated me. But I was able to sort of connect with him and ask him a couple of questions, just thinking he was a doctor, and ask him just what do you think and whatnot. And that helped me level out a little bit. So, I didn't have to always do Dr. Google. I could speak to an actual doctor. But again, when you get the actual diagnosis, for me, it was the switch sort of flicked and I was able to focus on, okay, trying to beat this thing.
What about your partner? How did she react to this news and then needing to support you through something like this?
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to speak on behalf of my wife. Her name's Pam, and she's an incredibly stoic, strong woman. In a lot of ways, I think it was very much the same for her. Going through the diagnosis, there was the fear of the unknown. Then once I was diagnosed, so I was originally diagnosed and we thought it was a type of lymphoma, but we didn't know exactly what type of lymphoma it was. Then we got the results and it turned out the lymphoma that I had was Burkitt's as opposed to the lymphoma that they originally thought it was. What they suspected was going to be like a 6 months out of hospital treatment regime of either chemo and radiation or just straight chemo. It immediately got flicked on its head. The hematologist, John, he gave me a call on a Thursday and he said, the actual results have come in. You've got Burkitt's lymphoma, which is that incredibly aggressive type of lymphoma. So, you're going to be immediately hospitalized and we have to start intensive in-hospital chemotherapy. Very different to what, we originally thought the treatment plan was going to be. And we got 2 young kids, right? So Zoe at that time, she was turning 1. And Lucy, my older daughter, she was, 4 years old. Mine and her initial thoughts, okay, well, how are we going to manage going through this when I'm in hospital and raising 2 children? So I think in a lot of ways it was fairly similar for her, where it was, okay, the switch has been flicked. We're just going to have to manage this in the best as we possibly can over this next 4 months. And she just got into the pattern, into the routine, into the groove.
How the hell did you guys do that with 2 young kids? Actually coordinate that and still manage to care for them with you going through this, and then obviously the emotional load of that must have been intense, because just having 2 young kids by itself without cancer is a lot, right? So how did you guys do that?
To be honest, I'll say it wasn't us in a lot of ways. It was her. She very much took the strength to pick up my slack, I guess you could say. And it was incredibly, incredibly hard. But again, we had an incredible amount of support around us and we were able to lean on that. The sense of community was insane when I was diagnosed. So, I didn't have, there was no real intention of this, but, when I was diagnosed, when I was hospitalized, I did an Instagram post. I turned off comments, but I just said, being diagnosed with cancer, in hospital, home for the next 4 months. And I turned off comments. I said, this isn't to get sympathy, but it's just to say, really, if it can happen to me, it can happen to anyone. You know what I mean? So it's, talk about it between yourselves. And I didn't expect this outpouring of love and community and support that we immediately got. My mates just showed up with a fridge and stuck it under our house because they just said, everyone wants to figure out how to support you guys, but we know you don't even have a very big fridge. So we bought you a fridge so you can stock the fridge when people buy you food. Right. And we're just like, we're not even there yet. So people are just amazing. And we're just so fortunate to have just this circle of just love through friends and family. But, there was all that positivity, but it was also incredibly challenging. Pam she quit her job, and during my first week, she was about to start a brand new job. So she made all lunches for the week. She did all the things that she could possibly do. Then my 2-year-old got RSV her second day into the job. So then she had to leave a job to, that day to take 2 days off because she was sick. And then because Pam had to immediately sort of stop breastfeeding, she got mastitis. So then it's she was unwell. It was really, really hard. So then we just had to lean on support and talk to people. And if you ask, people are just amazing that they deliver.
Such a ridiculous amount of stuff to all happen at once, but when it rains, it pours.
Doesn't it? And that's exactly what happened. Pam was probably a little bit hesitant. She didn't probably want to ask for help so much. But after that first week, I gave her parents a call from hospital, who I knew pretty much had their bags packed sitting at the front door, home in Ireland, waiting to come out if you needed it. And I sort of gave them a call and said, listen, Pam, we don't want to wait until literally the wheels have fallen off before we get help. So this first week has already been challenging enough. So we were so fortunate to have her parents, a mother and father-in-law who were, retired and willing to travel and able to help jump on a plane, come out here and essentially live in our house, and spend time with the girls and with Pam for 3.5 months, I think it was.
Yeah, that support network is so important, and it's never just one person going through cancer. It's their whole network, and you're very fortunate to have people who can drop everything and step up to help when the need is there. How did you go with accepting your diagnosis and the situation you were in? Were you able to just say, well, it is what it is, and we'll have to put one foot in front of the other? Or did you struggle a bit with feeling bitter with the world or pissed off that you'd been hit with this so unfairly?
At times you sort of go through different ebbs and flows, and how you feel about it all can be a little bit different day to day. But for me, I'd say overall, I think just because of the general speed that things happened, I didn't really necessarily have time to sit and feel sorry for myself, and wallow and think the whole world's against me. And, the fact of the matter is, it wasn't. I could, from my perspective, I can tell you 100 reasons why, it sucks, but I can tell you a whole lot more reasons why I was lucky, right? And if you focus on the positive, it's a whole different game. And I can tell you some of the positives, right? I was 33 years old at the time. I was training for a marathon. I was in a lot of ways the strongest and the fittest was going into what was going to, knock me for six. So if there's any time to go into it, 33 years old and fit as a fiddle was the time. The fact that I can get hospitalized immediately to start my chemotherapy just goes to show what an incredible medical system we've got, right? And, I can sort of go on. The other thing, the main thing for me of why I didn't feel, like the world was all over, and I speak to this to my friends, and it's not a little violin type thing, but, cancer affects 1 in 2 people at the age of 75. I've got my wife and my 2 kids, right? So it's very likely it was going to impact someone within our immediate family. Now, if it happened to my wife, the wheels would fall off very, very quickly because she's the backbone of this family. If it happened in terms of a cancer diagnosis to my 2 kids, I couldn't even think of what that impact would be for us. So without trying to play a violin, I am the weakest link in the family. And if there's anyone that should go or go through a challenging time and take one for the team, as a father, you take that every day of the week and twice on Sundays. So if you focus on the fact that in a lot of ways I was almost fortunate within that to take one for the team, and I was fit and I was in a great environment. I had amazing doctors, doctors I'm still in touch with, nurses that I went to Erica that I did Pilates with on Tuesday morning. Kids are friends. So much good stuff come out of it. So, there was no time to sit and wallow. It was just a time to just get on with things.
So it sounds like you found out you chose the right woman, thankfully.
Mate, yeah. I could tell you many different reasons why I can say that, including the fact that I'm allowed to play golf every now and then.
Has it changed your relationship?
Yeah, I think so. In a lot of ways, I'd say there's not a week that doesn't go by that we still talk about it or the impact or it in some different way, because it was a huge part of our life. Yeah, we've got the 2 young kids, but we only got married, I think about maybe 4 or 5 months before that. So even our first wedding anniversary, it's like made it pretty tough. So I think in a lot of ways, it's made our relationship a whole lot stronger. We've been able to go through challenging times together, and we're able to navigate that together. And I know myself, there's no one else I'd rather be with in the world. And I know how incredibly strong she is and how fortunate I am. So, our communication, our empathy, I think has increased tenfold. And I just know how lucky I am.
What was it like going through the actual treatment itself in terms of the physical toll that it took on you?
Yeah, I mean, it's tough, right? It absolutely knocks you for six, right? So my treatment regime was 16 days of consecutive 1 or more different types of chemotherapy. Within that 16 days, I'd also have 3 intrathecal, which is spinal chemotherapy. So they sort of inject the chemo directly into my spine. The thing was, and then I'd probably take a break. I'd wait for my bloods to recover, and that had a bit of variability in time for my blood work. And then once my blood sort of got to a certain level that the doctor said it was good enough, then I'd just rinse and repeat, go again. And the impact on the body was severe. It absolutely flattened me. But I found that each cycle had even though it's the same treatment, had varying different side effects. In my first cycle, I had ulcers and all that kind of stuff, but I wasn't super, super fatigued. My sort of mindset to all that was you just kind of had to take each day as it came. If you get caught up on feeling unwell, then it's very easy to sort of get yourself caught in a slump. So, I really tried hard, every day to get out of bed and, for example, strip my bed for the nurses. And if I could do that, then at least I kind of got myself out. I'd always try to use a different bathroom at the end of the corridor to take myself for a walk. So I just did little things to try and get my body going and moving. Gave me, in some ways, just that little bit of sense of purpose. But then there were days, for example, where you just, you walk to the bathroom and you're just so exhausted that means that you sleep for 4 hours, if that makes sense. So I took each day as it came, but I mean, it's a significant toll on the body. The side effects, in terms of the nausea, the mouth ulcers, I can't even think what else. Some of the side effects I'm not even going to mention because they come to mind, but, they're pretty gross. And then the fatigue. The fatigue was something else, nothing like I've experienced before.
And then going from being so fit to feeling the absolute worst that you could feel, that's going to be tough too mentally. Like I know exercise is very important for me personally, and you being as fit as you were and being into marathons and being at the top of your game, to not being able to get out of bed without a lot of effort, like that must have been pretty tough mentally as well.
Yeah, it was a reality check. But then again, what I tried to do was just reset and refocus to that level I was in. So, what I did in my second cycle was I actually brought my bike in, and set up my Wahoo trainer. And, on some of the days when I felt okay, I'd, push myself to try and turn over the legs. And, the reality or the realistic goal that I set for there might be 10 kilometers. And if I hit that, which was obviously just something that most people could do any day of the week, was an achievement or something that I succeeded at, which is something that I could almost in my own head celebrate. So, I tried to reassess and re-level what I did, but then tried to still implement some sort of physical activity within what I was doing, even when I was in hospital. I think even back into my first cycle, because I was on these steroids and I was up all night, I'll go and just try and walk up and down the corridors or count how many times it makes me sound like a crazy person, but walk up and down the stairs and count how many times I walk up the stairs just to sort of, again, achieve and keep the body moving and do something. So I'm just not wallowing in my own, sorrow.
Can you think through that time? Like when you're going through intense chemo like that, does your brain function? Like could you focus and read a book if you wanted, or like could you focus on watching a TV series, or you can't?
Yeah, really good question. And I guess it goes to that impact of how this stuff just knocks you about. So in my first cycle, I actually read quite a lot. But then by the time my last cycle, I wasn't able to focus. If I read a little bit, I'd pretty much be out for the count. But then I used to get these intrathecal chemos that I would get. During my first cycle, they gave me these incredibly painful migraines to the point that I'd literally sit in a dark room for 3 days with an ice pack over my head. I couldn't talk to anyone. I couldn't deal with loud noises. It was pretty awful. And so I could kind of read at some of those times, but there was no way I could listen or watch TV because that would just hurt my head far too much. But then by the end of my treatment, I couldn't read, but we'd kind of got the migraines under control by regular caffeine tablets and sort of managing the intrathecal a little bit better through CT guided, as opposed to felt like they were just throwing darts at the dartboard and seeing it stick, and so you got more weak. So there was different ways that we managed it. So then by the time I was at the end of my treatment, I didn't have any awful migraines, so I was able to watch the TV. But I'm not a big TV watcher. So, I'm sitting there trying to watch TV, and keep in mind that the internet reception in the ward is no good anyway, but there's only so much TV out to watch.
When was your last cycle?
So about a year ago, actually. So I finished, I was trying to think about that, it came up today. I think I finished around July last year. So it's just over a year ago that I finished up. And in a lot of ways, the chemo finishes, but the recovery sort of starts then. And I spoke about the challenges of, going through that initial point of testing, and then almost game day when you go and start your treatment, and then you finish the treatment. And this is the thing, you finish your treatment and you're kind of like, okay, I'm all good. But then you kind of got to get back to work, kids, and recover. And that was, that was something that I wasn't expecting to be as challenging as what it was. I thought the treatment was going to be the hard part, but in a lot of ways, I actually found that the following, 6 to 9 months, and the really, really tough part.
Just take me through that, like from when you were in remission and then you come out of hospital and it's like, okay, time to restart life again.
Yeah.
Go. What was the reality of actually making that happen for yourself and your family?
Yeah, so it was tough, right? Because around that same time, Pam's parents took off back to Ireland, so we kind of, I'm back home, but I was, incredibly fatigued. But like I said, I'd kind of felt like I'd been sitting on my hands for 4 months doing absolutely nothing. So you're just trying to get yourself back in the groove and find pace. And, for me, it was sort of try and move on. Everyone deals with going through this differently, but for me, I just wanted to sort of get on with life. So, most people would probably take 6 months of work off finishing treatment. I went back to work part-time after 2 weeks because I just wanted to, that sense of normality, sense of routine, and get grinding again. So it was really, really tough, but I found trying to get myself into routine and back into the reality of life was able to help us, get moving, get forward, and getting over what was a pretty challenging couple of months prior.
Did you rush into it too fast?
In hindsight, absolutely. But it's kind of, it's a really hard one, right? Because, again, I spoke to how Pam and I speak about this whole journey somewhat regularly. Now, we'd probably get onto sort of how bloody good at some point, maybe later, but blood transfusions, right? I received blood transfusions when I was in hospital, and they look at your blood count and they say, okay, you need a blood transfusion. And at times I thought I felt okay. And then you'd have a blood transfusion and you're like, man, I was seriously unwell and I feel so much better now. Yeah, you don't know until you know. And it was the same with returning to work. I was like, I need to do this. I think I can, think clearly. I think I can do all these sort of things. And then you start doing it, you're like, oh man, I absolutely cannot. But I didn't realize I couldn't, or I didn't realize that's how my mindset was, or how my mind was functioning. My level of performance was actually at this level when I was, I thought my level of performance was a whole lot better. So hindsight's a wonderful thing, but in hindsight, I definitely returned to work and went probably too, full throttle too fast. But equally, I think I needed to do that to get over the angst, the issues that I had from having blood cancer. So I was sort of, in a lot of ways, stuck between a rock and a hard place.
I suppose you're trying to prove to yourself that you can move on from it and you can go back to having life the way it was. And I guess you're trying to show your wife and your kids and your network that as well. But I imagine mostly trying to prove to yourself, like, this isn't going to be something that's going to alter my path for life. Like, I can get back into it and I can do it. And
that's right.
I understand wanting to prove that as soon as possible, like wanting to feel normal as soon as possible. But then the irony of that knocking you for six because people are telling you, like, no, you really need to take your time, and you're thinking, no, you need to take your time. I need to get back. I need to get back to where I need to be.
Right. Exactly right. So I mean, it's a funny one, right? I mentioned about how I was training for a marathon at the point in time my diagnosis. So I ran ran a marathon, I think 4 or 5 weeks post-treatment, because I was just like, that's where I was at before I went to the hospital. That's where I want to be at now. And everyone was like, mate, you shouldn't be doing that. I tried to run the marathon during my treatment, but they said, no, they were the doctors. And so I was out of hospital, so I was like, I'm going to do this. And it took a massive toll on me physically and mentally doing that. But, I wanted to move on. I wanted to move past. I wanted to say to myself, I am back at where I want to be, as opposed to where I was. It was silly, but for me, it was mentally so important for me to achieve that and go and do it. It took me, I don't know, I can't even remember. I think it ended up being like 7-minute 20 splits, right? So there was parts where I was walking, my whole body was just completely cramped up. I was in so much pain, but I was just so hell-bent on doing that because I just wanted to say to myself, I'm moving past it.
And when you crossed the finish line, did you think to yourself, yeah, that was worth it?
I actually kind of did, to be honest. I kind of did. I had a massive sense of just personal achievement. And, it wasn't like a marathon race, like some big event. I just went and did it myself. And my mate sort of came and he was on a bike and caught me at the last, I think, 5 or 6 kilometers. Ran some water because I was out of it and desperately needed it. But I thought, the sense of personal achievement was definitely there to say that, okay, you're starting to get on to the other side of it, which was important for me.
A year on from that now, where are you at with everything? Do you feel like you are the old JK, or are you a new JK now? Are you still trying to prove yourself to yourself, or are you feeling more comfortable now?
I think I'll always be trying to do something to prove myself, try and get my handicap down, try and better myself. I'm definitely not the old JK. I guess you said new JK. I'd just say I'm a different JK. I'm just different to who I am, who I once was. I have a completely different change of perspective, I think, on things. I have a new appreciation. I have new priorities. I have a lot more, I think, empathy and sympathy for people going through challenges. And in a lot of ways, it sounds crazy, but as a person, I think I'm I've grown and I'm better for the experience. I just know how lucky I am and how lucky every day in some ways every day that I have can be. So yeah, I'm not the same JK. My level of cognitive performance still isn't quite as to where it was, but it's definitely improving. My ability to get through a week of work and kids and doing a bit of gym is improving. I'm not getting as flattened, but I still have that day off on a Friday just to have a sleep and a reset, which is go play a little bit of golf and just switch my mind off until I put one in the bushes and get incredibly frustrated. I think for the most part I've grown from the experience and somewhat better for it. I just count my blessings. I think I'm getting better at maybe not throwing myself 100% into one thing at one point in time. I had a really, and I don't know if we'll talk about it, but like the Leukaemia Foundation, right? The Leukaemia Foundation is fantastic because they create a network of people that have gone through similar experiences and shared experience with people that have gone through what you've gone through is so crucial for your recovery. And I had a conversation with one of my directors at work, and he'd gone through similar sort of a cancer battle himself. I didn't really even know to that extent what he had gone through. And he sort of sat down, and I think about this so often. He drew a graph, and he's like, this is where you were before. And he goes, if you don't cut yourself some slack, you might not get to 100% of what you once before. You might need to realize that 90% is your new reality. And if you keep forcing yourself to go at 100%, your reality might actually not be that 90%. You might drive yourself into the ground and your reality could be 40 or 60%. So you've got to be kind to yourself. You've got to realize you're not the person, but you can get there if you give yourself the realities. And the thing is I had entered myself into a half Ironman because I wanted to do a half Ironman, which would have symbolized about a year out from treatment. And I was like, so I signed up, I think, towards the end of my treatment. Well, I think I was still in hospital. I signed up. And I was like, well, I'm going to do a half Ironman. He's like, but do you need to? Because you're still managing your kids. You're still managing work, all these things. And he goes, you can go do a run and you can still get a great sense of achievement. You could go to a triathlon and like, do you need to do that? And it was probably one of the first times that I've actually said to myself, you know what, I'm actually not going to do it. So I guess, yeah, I maybe give myself a little bit more slack, a little bit longer of leash now that I'm verbalizing and talking to you, because never before would I have signed up to something and not thrown everything at it, I guess you could say. So yeah, I guess in some ways I am a little bit.
And it's a bit of an identity shift there, and I'm maturing in being able to accept like that doesn't make me any less of a person or any less of a man if I can't achieve absolutely every harebrained idea that I come up with in my head. Like it doesn't, if you say, I'm going to go do a half Ironman and then you go, actually, no, that's not the best idea. That doesn't make you any less than. Sounds cliche, but you are enough. Like, and you being alive and being healthy, and able to get out and exercise and do your job and be there for your family, that's enough. And you don't have to do these crazy challenges or tests of your mettle all the time because, you've already proven it. Must have proven it to yourself if you really think about it. Like gone through cancer, you've done your marathon anyway, you've done that while juggling having kids. Nothing compared to how your wife feels being married to you, it sounds like. But
yeah, well,
you've proven it time and time again. So hopefully as we get older, we can start to accept that more. Not that we get so comfortable that we don't test ourselves anymore, because I think it's important to be still pushing your limits and wanting to grow, but to actually say, yeah, I don't actually have to puff my chest out all the time and make myself see it, because I've got that quiet sense that I actually know what I'm capable of. And you must have a pretty strong sense of that now with what you've gone through.
I do. I do. And I think, if I actually think back to the old JK, I think in a lot of ways, especially the school JK, that sense of identity was probably a bit all over the joint, you know. But now, to all those points that you've mentioned, but the 2 points, I guess, that are most prevalent in my life are those 2 kids of mine, right? And they become the priority in a lot of ways. And obviously my wife, those 2 points are our priority. And knowing that and doing what you can do for them, you're right. Nothing else really matters.
And what's it like being their dad now that you're on the other side of this and they're a little bit older? I suppose they're not at an age where you're explaining it to them, but that's going to be part of your story now that you're doing as well as you're doing, and you can focus more on being there and being dad. What's that? How does that impact your sense of being a dad and I guess your gratitude for it all?
You finished on it, gratitude. So I think, we just, I don't know. I would have liked to thought I was a pretty good parent beforehand, and was pretty present and always, wanting the best for them. But I guess that's just magnified now, and those little things that maybe I was potentially a little bit less cognizant of, I'm a whole lot more hyper aware of. But you come to realize how lucky we are to still be around. And then you just, realize that they're the most important thing for both me and Pam. And so you just want to do whatever you can possibly do to be around them and spend time with them. I think most parents would feel the same way, but I think for us, it's just a little bit more magnified, and we're probably a little bit more trying to be aware of how lucky we are to be able to spend those times with them. And you reassess those priorities, right? Sometimes, maybe at work, it's easy to have the blinkers on and maybe not go to that little assembly, or have the blinkers on and I'm still guilty of it, being at swim class and sending out an email. But, when you're doing some of those things with the kids, I think it's still in the back of their head that, hey, they're growing up. We're lucky to be here. If you're going to be here, let's just be present and be around and, be there.
Yeah, absolutely. And also being acutely aware of the fact that so many people don't get that opportunity, and so many people get cancer, and so many people get blood cancer. And unfortunately, even though we've had some incredible advancements, still so many people losing their lives to it and not able to live out the lives that they want. So, that must be something that's different to you than for people who haven't had cancer.
You're absolutely right. I mean, the thing about blood cancer, right, it's most prevalent in children. We are incredibly lucky to have our kids. And then when we speak to blood cancer, specifically, 55 people will be told they have blood cancer, or one person every 26 minutes, right? So it's everywhere. And then being acutely aware that those 55 people that are told that they have blood cancer, with the prevalence being children, we are hyper aware how lucky we are to have 2 beautiful young girls. And I think, speaking to blood cancer, I'd just love to make the point of how fortunate, and I know I said about the hospitals and the people around us and the support networks, but I guess foundations like the Leukaemia Foundation are, because they do incredible work in terms of supporting people that are going through such challenging times. And, we kind of spoke to my hospitalization about, all the things that I was able to sort of do, which was get on the bike and focus on my treatment. Not everyone has the ability to be able to almost put the blinkers on and have a wife at home that is able to take on all those responsibilities and priorities. And for so many other people, they might not be so lucky. They have to worry about, groceries. They have to worry about the petrol to get to visit the family member, accommodation. Like, I was so lucky that I was in Newcastle and we lived 5 minutes down the road. I know a guy who's just left hospital who I knew from when I was first admitted. He's from Taree, and he's got 2 young kids and a wife that are hours away. So you got foundations like the Leukaemia Foundation that put up his family so they can be around them. And that support network, as I mentioned, so crucial for how your mindset is going through those challenges, to fight mentally and physically through cancer. So things like the foundations like the Leukaemia Foundation just play such a pivotal role in helping people go through blood cancer.
And all the people who donate blood is so important as well. And as you said, it make you feel so much better getting those transfusions, and you and thousands of other people around Australia who are benefiting from that and are saving lives all the time. That's obviously become a foundational pillar for you with How Bloody Good. Can you tell me about that?
Yeah, for sure. So, I mean, for me, I guess it goes back to that point that I spend too much time in one room, I start climbing up the walls. But I was, again, really, really fortunate to have so many people reach out and ask how could they help. And I genuinely believe that people want to help, right? People wanted to help. It wasn't just a throwaway comment. And we weren't going to, we were, again, relatively fortunate. We didn't have to worry too much about finances and things like that. But we wanted people to be able to have a way to fulfill that sense of, helping people that you get. So I spoke to one of the nurses on the ward who said to me, well, you have blood cancer. If people want to help, the thing that they should do is donate blood because you're going to need blood. So with the help of a friend, we set up How Bloody Good. And the whole idea about How Bloody Good is encouraging people who are eligible to donate blood, right? And blood transfusions are a way that people are able to do some good and to help. One donation can help up to 3 people, and it's free to do, and you get snacks for it. And it makes such an impact for the people that are receiving those transfusions. So it was, once I realized that, honestly, it gave me a sense of purpose as well within the ward. It gave me just something to focus on. It gave me something to do. It gave me something to say, okay, well, this is my situation, but here's how I and everyone who are rallying around can help people. And so it gave me fulfillment as well. And, seeing people and talking to people that have received blood transfusions, so many people are so grateful. And they also want to say thank you to people who donate. So it was a match made in heaven. I'm really thankful that Melissa, the nurse on the ward, recommended it. And I'm grateful for all the people that donated blood to help me. And now I'm grateful to be able to set up How Bloody Good, which is a way to sort of encourage people to donate blood.
It is so important, and it's one of those things that you need to bring awareness to and remind people of, and try to give people an insight into where that actually goes and the good that it does, and put faces to it and make people understand that it's real people there who are needing that to change their lives and save their lives. Because if you don't think about it like that, it's just something that the average person who hasn't donated blood before or hasn't had someone have blood cancer or something along those lines just probably isn't thinking of. But then if you made them aware of the difference that they could make, and you actually show them that with like what you do with your Instagram page, then I think a lot of people will think, oh yeah, I could do that. And then they start doing it, and then hopefully they keep doing it. So being able to tell those stories and get people together for that purpose and actually remind people of how important that is, and that there's this massive need for it that is constant and ever growing, is really, really important. And I think you'd probably agree that there's not enough out there in terms of reminding people about it or really explaining it to people. It's just it's something that you hear about very occasionally, or someone might mention it in an office or something, and then people around them go, oh yeah, I should do that.
Exactly. I mean, I mentioned before how I worked in like cardiac devices, right? And so I've been in cardiac procedures where people would need a blood transfusion. And so just a bag of blood would appear and a patient would get a blood transfusion. And so I'd seen it literally right in front of me. And I'd still never really put two and two together. That bag of blood helping that person at that point in time was just by an everyday Aussie taking time out of their day to roll out their sleeve and help that person that was in a critical position. And I think, how bloody good just brings that nudge or that reminder a little bit closer to people and brings it a little bit more front of mind for people. Because again, when most people donate, they feel a sense of satisfaction. Lifeblood do a really good job of sort of closing that loop. They now have a text message system where it will actually notify you if your blood donation is on its way to help someone. So you can get a text that says like your blood's on its way to Westmead to help someone. And then you just, wow, like this is happening right now within potentially 72 hours of donating the blood. So it's incredibly important. And to your point that you made, like it's an ever-growing need. We spoke to how, blood cancer, the prevalence within the population is growing, right? And 34% of blood donations go to people going through some sort of cancer treatment. So that need is going to increase. Like most people kind of think that it goes to trauma and things like that, and it most definitely does. But the lion's share goes to people going through cancer therapy. So there's this symbiotic relationship, this direct relationship between, blood cancer and blood donation.
And September is Blood Cancer Month, where the whole country thinks about this more often than the rest of the year. What do you want people to know about this month and the significance of it, and how your average person might be able to get themselves involved in helping people with blood cancer?
So I guess one of the first things I'd say in terms of blood cancer is understand some of the symptoms. That to me would be incredibly important, and don't wait. So I had a lump that popped up in my neck, and we talk about the benefits of hindsight. I did kick the can down the road a little bit because I was just like, I'm fit. I don't smoke. I'm young. I don't fit the mold. So therefore I can't have cancer. No way. So my first thing that I would say, if you show any sort of symptoms, don't do what I did. Go see a doctor. And then the other thing that I would say is, do what you can do to help others going through it if you're not going through it yourself. So whether or not it's donating blood, or whether or not it's donating time or money to like the World's Greatest Shave or to the Leukaemia Foundation that have helped people, these are all things that I think are incredibly important. The way I see it is, if you can donate blood, you help people going through cancer treatment now. And if you donate money towards like the World's Greatest Shave, the Leukaemia Foundation, clinical research, you're going to hopefully prevent people having to go through it into the future. When I speak to people, Peru, for example, with the Leukaemia Foundation, specifically speaking about blood cancer, there's no screening, right? There's no ways that we can have early detection like you can with some of the other cancers. So, it's really, really tough. I can't say, go and do these things, live a really healthy lifestyle, and you can not. It won't affect you. The reality is we need all hands on deck doing what we can do now and to stop into the future, because as you said, it's growing, and the awful thing about it is its impact to young kids. And if we can do things to prevent it from impacting young kids, then I think we should do everything we can.
Well said. So if people listen to this and they want to find out some more about How Bloody Good, or where they can donate, or Leukaemia Foundation, where should people go?
Yeah, so I think How Bloody Good, check out the Instagram. It's How Bloody Good, speaks for itself. And then to donate to the Leukaemia Foundation. So the Leukaemia Foundation just do a huge breadth of work and do such crucial work. So, and I will say, I spoke to, donating blood for the present. Well, donating money, efforts, time to the Leukaemia Foundation equally helps people the now, because I spoke before about accommodation and things like that. So there's a lot of things that the Leukaemia Foundation do at the present as well. But then as well as that, they look at investment into clinical trials and research into, stopping blood cancer, which is an awful, awful disease. The other thing when I think to the Leukaemia Foundation, and we spoke about navigating through such a hard time, the Leukaemia Foundation was great for us because a lot of the times you're so focused on that time and that present of what you need to do. And the Leukaemia Foundation gave us a bit of, I wouldn't say it gave us a bit of perspective, but some of the things that they enabled us to do, for example, the grandparents took Lucy and Zoe, I think, or maybe just Lucy while I was in hospital, to Oakvale Farm in Faunawell, right? And made sure that, the kids got some attention, some love and some activities, whereas, sometimes I guess you're just so focused on the blind side of getting through it. They also set up an initiative where we were able to go to Hunter Valley Gardens and see the Christmas lights. So, what they do impacts the holistic person and the holistic family of people going through blood cancer treatment, and we're so grateful for it. So, and I know that's for me. I speak to the family that I know who have kids, in Taree, and they're in Newcastle having treatment. So they just do such important and fantastic work. So please, if you can, donate money, donate time, or reach out through just the Leukaemia Foundation, Google it. And I'm sure they will love that donation. And then they obviously do stuff like the World's Greatest Shave as well. Great initiative. I shaved my head this year. I just grown it back. And interestingly, my hair grew back with curls, which I was sort of into. I was thinking I could grow an afro. And then I did the World's Greatest Shave, and my hair grew back straight again. But yeah, that's another great initiative that people can do to raise, firstly, awareness and money to fight blood cancer.
There's some terrific foundations, and it really is about that whole picture, not just the person who's going through it themselves, but their family and their kids, and that comprehensive world of care that people need when they're going through cancer. So, yeah, some really good ways for people to get involved there. It's good to see you doing so well now, and with that big smile on your face and feeling good and able to live the life you want to live, and then also still finding time or carving out space to do the advocacy work. And you've had this life-altering experience that's actually given you an opportunity to be able to help so many people in a way that really means something to you. And I guess that's the gift that's come out of this terrible turmoil that you've been through. So good on you for seizing that opportunity and making the most of it to really help people, because that's a choice, and it's obviously paying off for you, and it would be paying dividends for a lot of people out there as well. So keep on using your story and your advocacy to do good, because yeah, it's awesome.
Well, thank you, mate. And I guess thank you firstly for the opportunity to speak to my story and to blood cancer, especially with the upcoming Blood Cancer Month. But then also thank you, mate, for, I guess, normalising the conversation around mental health as well. I think it's incredibly important. Yeah, thank you, mate. But yeah, thanks for having me, but thank you for what you're doing as well, mate. It's fantastic.
That's it for this episode. If you like what we're all about, support us by following Young Blood Men's Mental Health on Instagram and Young Blood Mental Health on TikTok. Every podcast episode is recorded in professional quality video, and they're all up on our Young Blood Men's Mental Health YouTube channel. So please show some love and subscribe. You can find everything there is to know about the podcast at youngbloodmensmentalhealth.com. And most importantly, please share these stories with anyone in your life who needs to know they're not alone. We're all in this together. Catch you next time.